Hey guys, it's Evan here. Today we're going to be installing this 120 gig SSD into a server that's running Freenas 11.3. So, the first step is we are going to be putting this SSD into this drive caddy. So for installing this, we have to make sure that the bottom is facing this metal plate. So we are going to put that in there. Then we have to make sure to put the 4 screws in. You'll likely have to provide your own screws, because whenever I order these caddies off of eBay, they do not come with screws and neither do the SSDs. So now that the SSD is mounted, we are ready to move on to installing it in the system. Alright, so here we are at the server. I apologize for the bad lighting, but that's all I can do. So, right now, I've moved everything off of the server so we can have easy access to the top panel, because the first step of doing this is we're going to have to remove the old boot drive. So, the old boot drive is just a 8GB flash drive, so we have to remove this top panel in order to be able to access it, because it's internal. So, now we got that panel off. Right over here is the flash drive. You're going to want to make sure that the server is powered off first, of course. But now we have that removed. Before you have it removed, if you're running Freenas, you're going to want to make sure you back up your config file. I'll show you how to re-upload your config file later. So now we have this removed. We're going to install the SSD. So you see I have 4 slots right here. What I want to do, just for the sake of organization, is I'm going to move all of these over one slot so I can have the boot drive as drive number 1. So, actually, we're not going to plug these in yet. We're going to wait to plug these in once we have the operating system installed, just to make sure we don't accidentally install it on the wrong drive. Because if you do install it on one of these drives, you will lose everything you have on it. So no, none of those are plugged in, and now slot number 1 is empty. So we are going to slide the SSD into slot number 1 and click it into position. So now the only drive installed is number 1, which is the new SSD. So next step, we have to get our installation media ready. Now we have the SSD installed to the server. We are now going to create the installation media. So for that, we're going to be using a software called Rufus. So in order to use this, we're going to make sure we have the right device selected. So right now it is a 128 gig flash drive. And then for boot selection, we are going to choose Freenas 11.3 release. So now we have both of those selected. We're now going to start making the bootable USB drive. So warning, all data on device, the USB will be deleted. So that's fine, we don't have anything important on this. So we are going to go ahead and click OK. So now it's going to go ahead and make this a bootable USB. So we're going to wait for this to be done. Alright, so now that this green bar is fully filled, we know that the installation media is ready. So we're just going to close this, and now our USB drive is safe to remove from this computer and to put on the server. Alright, so now we have created our installation media. We are now ready to put the USB into this system so we can install Freenas onto the new SSD. So what I'm going to do is, since the USB port on the inside of the server takes priority over the ones on the outside, I'm just going to plug it in there. If you were to go into the system BIOS and configure it to boot off the outer ones first, you could avoid having to do this step. But since I already have the top of the server off, I'm just going to put it inside anyways. Alright, so now we have the flash drive in the server. The next step is going to be opening up Internet Explorer. And what we are going to do is we are going to remote access the server. This might be different if you're installing it on a device or on a computer that does not have any sort of remote console. But since we don't have a monitor or a keyboard and mouse hooked up to the server, we are going to use this instead. So we're going to sign into this, and the rest of it is going to be done from here. So we're going to log in. You're going to launch the remote console. So right now all we have is a blank screen because the server is turned off right now. So we're going to go back over to system status, and we are going to turn on the server. Now, if all goes to plan, it's just gonna boot up and it's gonna start the installation process for us. So right now, if you were to have to change the boot device, now would be the time. So since it just said press F9 to set up, now would be the time where you press F9 and do that. We're going to let it boot up here. So booting off of drive key C, FreeBSD bootstrap loader, that's Freenas. So I'm going to press enter to skip the auto boot. Save us about 5 seconds there. You're going to select option 1. Now see, it's set it up as HP RAID 0, DA 0. So we're going to hit space to select that. We're going to press enter. So it's going to erase all partitions on there. We're fine with that. So we're going to click enter. Enter the root password. This will be the password that you use to configure Freenas. Since this is an older server, we are going to be booting off of BIOS. But if you're running this off of a newer consumer-grade PC, it's likely going to be UEFI boot. So we're going to select BIOS. Okay, now since we are running this on an SSD, it gives us the option to create a swap partition. So since we have more than enough space, since this is a 120 gig SSD, we're just going to go ahead and create a swap partition. Now we're just going to let it go through its boot process. This might take a little bit, especially if you're running it on a hard drive. Alright, so now we have this installed. We are going to click OK, and we are going to reboot the system. So once this is done, we are going to be able to go through the initial configuration for this. Alright, so now that Freenas is installed, we are going to boot up the system again, and we are going to go in and upload our configuration file. Alright, so now that the system is finished booting, we can now open up a tab on the browser of your choice, and we are going to connect to the IP address that is listed down here. So that one, in our case, would be 192.168.0.133. So it would likely be a lower number, but since I already have this IP assigned to the server's MAC address, no matter how many times I reinstall, it is going to stay this IP address right here. And since I already have the credentials saved, and it's the same as last time, I can just click login. And you see right here, currently have no pools, no nothing. So what we're going to do is under system, we're going to go down to general, and then what you did last time, or what you should have done earlier if you're upgrading to an SSD, is you should have a config file. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload the config. Should be a .db file. I'm going to open that, and we are going to upload it. So while this is uploading, it's going to have to reboot the server, and that's fine. And since we have all the disks in there from before, it should automatically load all of our plugins, the pool from earlier, and any other settings you have on here, like if you set up virtual machines or any of that stuff. So now we're here, we should be able to log in off of any account you previously had on the system. And now you can see here, we have our old drive pool. You should have all the same accounts on here. You should have all your plugins that you had previously. It's all just on a different boot drive now. So that'll be it for today. I hope this helped you guys upgrade your boot drive to something more reliable than a cheap flash drive. And I will see you guys next time.